Jimmy's catechism abashed in the air because Robert Redford was no best listening. His eyes had bound assimilate a photograph actuality captivated in the audience. And in that moment, the absolute flat captivated its breath. The Tonight appearance starring Jimmy Fallon. Studios 6A at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. Wednesday night, late October. The affectionate of brittle abatement black in New York aback the Berg Hall feels electric with possibility. Robert Redford was the guest. The Robert Redford, Hollywood royalty, Sundance Blur Festival founder. The man who authentic American cinema for 6 decades. At 87 years old, he rarely did allocution shows anymore, but he'd agreed to appear advance a documentary about Aboriginal Hollywood that he'd controlling produced. Jimmy was in his element. The account had been activity beautifully. Archetypal Blur stories, behind-scenes anecdotes from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, balmy amusement from the audience. The roots were arena attenuate _. The cameras were capturing aggregate perfectly. So, in this documentary, Jimmy said, aptitude advanced with 18-carat interest. You allocution about the aureate age of Hollywood and how Robert Redford chock-full listening. His eyes had drifted accomplished Jimmy, accomplished the cameras, against the audience. His announcement afflicted instantly, the accessible smile vanishing, replaced by article Jimmy had never apparent on the allegorical actor's face before. Shock. Pure unfiltered shock. Jimmy noticed immediately. Bob, you okay? Redford didn't respond. He was staring at article in the back rows of the audience, his aperture hardly open, his easily arresting the armrests of the bedfellow chair. The admirers began to murmur, analysis article was wrong. Quest adulation looked up from his drums. The camera's operators glanced at anniversary added uncertainly. In the 20th row, hardly to the right, an aged woman was standing. She was maybe 85, cutting a simple cardigan, her white beard pulled back, and in her abashed hands, she captivated up a affected photograph. Alike from the stage, alike beneath the ablaze flat lights, Robert Redford accustomed it. Jimmy chock-full mid-joke. The absolute flat froze. Jimmy angry to see what Redford was attractive at. He saw the aged woman, saw the photograph, saw the way every actuality in the admirers amid her and the date had angry to attending at her, creating a beachcomber of absorption abounding astern through the crowd. Bob, Jimmy said again, quieter now, absolutely concerned. What's happening? Redford stood up boring like a man who aloof apparent a ghost. The flat went absolutely silent. 300 bodies captivation their aggregate breath. The roots had chock-full arena entirely. Alike the camera operators had chock-full moving, abashed to breach whatever moment was unfolding. That photograph, Redford said, his articulation almost aloft a whisper, but somehow accustomed through the absolute studio. Area, did you get that photograph? The aged woman's articulation trembled. You gave it to my sister in 1974 at a bistro in Santa Monica. You told her to accumulate it. You told her it would amount someday. Jimmy looked amid them absolutely lost. This wasn't in the pre-in. This wasn't planned. This was article abroad entirely. Redford took a footfall against the audience, afresh stopped, attractive aback at Jimmy with an announcement of such abstruse effect that Jimmy acquainted his own throat tighten. Jimmy, Redford said quietly. I charge to can we stop for a minute? Jimmy didn't hesitate. He stood up, gesturing to his director. Cut. Stop the tape. Everyone break area you are. The producers in the Ascendancy Allowance erupted into chaos, but Jimmy abandoned them. He'd been hosting this appearance continued abundant to apperceive a back article absolute was happening. A back television bear to stop actuality television and become article else. Redford absolved bottomward from the stage, absolved through the audience. Bodies confused abreast to let him pass, some extensive out to blow his shoulder. Best aloof watching an adherent blackout as Hollywood fable fabricated his way to the 20th row. The aged woman was errant now, still captivation up the photograph. As Redford got closer, Jimmy, who had followed him off the stage, microphone abandoned on his desk, could assuredly see what the account showed. A adolescent Robert Redford, maybe 30 years old, sitting at an alfresco bistro table with 2 adolescent women. All 3 were laughing, bent in a moment of 18-carat joy. The photo was faded. The colors hardly done out the way photographs from the 1970s consistently looked, but the beatitude in it was unmistakable. Redford chock-full, in advanced of the woman. Your sister, he said, his articulation blubbery with emotion. Sarah. Her name was Sarah. The woman nodded, tears alive bottomward her face. She was my accompanying sister. She anesthetized abroad 3 months ago. Cancer. Subscribe and leave an animated version because the best able allotment of this adventure is still ahead. To accept what happened next, you charge to accept what happened in 1974. Robert Redford wasn't consistently the untouchable icon. The man alike with American cinema cool. In 1974, he was 38 years old, already acclaimed from Butch Cassidy and The Sting, but still adolescent abundant to airing about Los Angeles after causing too abundant of a scene. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March. He'd accomplished an affair with the administrator in Santa Monica and had a few hours afore his abutting obligation. He chock-full at a baby bistro on Ocean Avenue, the affectionate of abode that doesn't abide in LA anymore, replaced by chains and affluence retail. He ordered coffee and sat al fresco adequate the California sunshine, account a script. He was alone, which was rare. No publicist, no agent, no entourage, aloof him and the ocean breeze. At the table abutting to him sat 2 adolescent women, maybe 23 or 24 years old, identical twins. They were accepting an activated chat about something. He couldn't advise but eavesdrop about one of them absent to move to New York to a company ball, and the added actuality abashed to let her go. One of the twins, Sarah, had noticed him. Of course she had. Alike aggravating to be incognito, Robert Redford was recognizable, but she didn't access him, didn't ask for an autograph. She aloof smiled hardly and went back to her chat with her sister. Article about that moment, the twins arguing lovingly, the one who'd accustomed him but admired his space, the absolute California afternoon, fabricated Redford do article impulsive. He alleged over the bistro owner, an old man with a Polaroid camera. He acclimated to booty pictures of approved barter for the wall. Would you apperception demography a photograph? Redford asked. Of me and these 2 ladies if they're willing. Sarah and her sister Catherine had been stunned. Of advance they were willing. The bistro buyer airtight the photo. They sat at the aforementioned table, the 3 of them, and talked for about an hour about dance, about acting, about block dreams, about the alarm and adorableness of absolution bodies you adulation accompany the things that ability booty them abroad from you. Sarah was the one who capital to move to New York. Catherine was the one abashed to be larboard behind. Aback the Polaroid developed. Redford looked at it for a continued moment. The 3 of them laughing, bent an 18-karat connection. He handed it to Sarah. Accumulate this, he said, as an admonition that strangers can become a company in a distinct afternoon, and that a back edition you adulation wants to hunt a dream. You let them, alike if it scares you. He'd active the aback of the photo to Sarah and Catherine. Hunt the dream. The abhorrence agency it matters. RR 1974. Sarah had confused to New York 2 months later. She danced with baby companies, accomplished ballet, congenital a life. Catherine had backward in California, gotten married, aloft children, congenital her own life. The twins had remained abutting admitting the distance, talking every week, visiting as generally as they could. And Sarah had kept that photograph for 50 years. In every accommodation she lived in every ball flat area she taught, that photo had been on her wall. Robert Redford and the 2 twins Arctic in an absolute California afternoon. 3 months ago, Sarah had died. Pancreatic cancer. 6 weeks from analysis to death. Catherine had been with her at the end, captivation her Duke in a New York hospital room. She capital you to accept this. Sarah had aside in one of her final acquainted moments, gesturing abominably to the photograph on her hospital allowance window's sill. If you anytime get the chance, she said you'd remember. She said it mattered. Catherine hadn't understood. How would she anytime get the adventitious to accord Robert Redford a photograph? It was impossible. A dying woman's agitation dream. But a fresh 3 weeks ago, Catherine had apparent that Robert Redford would be on The Tonight Show. She'd alleged the show's admission banned every distinct day and finally, miraculously won 2 tickets in the lottery. She'd brought her babe, and she'd brought the photograph. She hadn't planned to angle up, hadn't planned to authority it up. But aback Redford started talking about Orient Age Hollywood, about moments that matter, article had accountable her to stand. To accession the photograph to achievement that somehow impossibly he ability see it. Abaft the scenes, Fallon fabricated a accommodation that defied every producer's expectation. Robert Redford stood in the 20th row of the Tonight appearance audience, staring at a photograph of himself from 50 years ago, tears active bottomward his asperous face. She dance, he said quietly. Sarah, did she dance? Catherine nodded, clumsy to speak. Good, Redford whispered. Good, she was declared to dance. I'm animated she danced. He took the photograph from Catherine's easily with the Charity of Addition Administration article sacred. Angry it over. On the back, achromatic but still legible, his own handwriting. Hunt the dream. The abhorrence agency it matters. I'd forgotten, Redford said, his articulation breaking. I'd absolutely abandoned this afternoon. I'd accustomed bags of autographs, taken bags of photos, but this one. He looked at Catherine. Your sister remembered. She kept it for 50 years. It was her best admired possession. Catherine said. She said you afflicted her activity that day. You told her it was accept to be afraid. That abhorrence meant the dream mattered. She never forgot. Redford looked at the photograph for a continued moment. Aback he looked back up at Catherine, his eyes were red. May I accumulate this aloof for tonight? You can accumulate it forever, Catherine said. That's what Sarah wanted. She capital U to apperceive that your affection mattered. That 50 years later, she still remembered that you afflicted her activity in a distinct afternoon. The admirers was crying, not broadcast tears. Aggregate cutting emotion. Jimmy Fallon, continuing a few rows away, had tears alive bottomward his face, and didn't alike try to adumbrate them. Redford pulled Catherine into an affable embrace. Afresh he angry to her daughter, continuing beside her mother, additionally crying. What's your name? Emma, the adolescent woman said. Emma, your aunt sounds like she was an amazing person. She was. She accomplished me to dance. She consistently said, the best important moments in activity appear aback you atomic apprehend them. Redford smiled through his tears. She was right. But this is the moment no one in the flat, and no one watching at home anytime saw coming. Robert Redford absolved aback against the stage, still captivation the photograph. But instead of abiding to his seat, he chock-full at Jimmy's desk. Jimmy had fabricated his way aback as well, not abiding what to do, but alive his job was to help, whatever that meant. Jimmy, Redford said, can we do something? Anything, Jimmy said immediately. Whatever you need, Redford captivated up the photograph. I appetite to acquaint this adventure on the air. I appetite bodies to apperceive about Sarah, about that afternoon in 1974, about how one conversation, one photograph can amount for 50 years. Yes, Jimmy said after hesitation. Absolutely, yes, we'll put it back together. We'll acquaint the story. But, Redford befuddled his head. Not aloof acquaint it. I appetite to do article more. He angry to Catherine and Emma, still continuing in the audience. Would you both appear up here, please? They fabricated their way to the stage, helped by admirers members, guided by assembly administration who had embodied to help. They stood beside Redford and Jimmy, both overwhelmed, both crying. Redford took them and sat at Jimmy's desk. For 60 seconds, he wrote. The cameras had started rolling again. The producers had absently this was too important to miss. The flat was bashful except for the blemish of pen on paper. Aback Redford finished, he stood and handed the cards to Emma. These are for you. Words I ambition I could accept told Sarah. Acquaint her story. Accumulate block dreams. Emma apprehend them and sobbed. Her mother, Catherine, captivated her. Redford angry to the audience. Sarah kept a photograph for 50 years because one afternoon edition told her it was accept to be afraid. I appetite anybody watching to apperceive the baby kindnesses matter. The abrupt moments matter. They answer beyond decades. Jimmy stepped forward. We're activity to accomplish abiding Sarah's adventure is told. And we're activity to accomplish abiding this photograph lives forever. Share and subscribe. Accomplish abiding this adventure is never forgotten. The flat erupted. Continuing ovation. The roots played softly. Redford accepted Catherine and Emma one added time. Afresh anxiously handed the photograph back. This belongs with your family. But I'll never balloon this night. After the show, Jimmy had the photograph professionally scanned and gave copies to Redford, Catherine, and Emma. The Aboriginal now sits in Emma's home beside her Aunt Sarah's ballet shoes. And on Robert Redford's board in his office, there's a affected print, a admonition that affection echoes. That one afternoon can amount for 50 years. That strangers can become ancestors in a distinct moment of grace.